Time for the spooks. Soberoni of G&A Reviews here with a new round of Servant Spotlights just in time for Halloween. First up, we have the Ludus adventurer, Brave Liz. We'll be examining her stats and skills, as well as going over pointers on how to utilize her effectively, and an overall grade comparing her to how she stacks up to the other 4-star servants. Now, on to Liz's stats. Brave Liz has a max HP of 11,248, which is low for a 4-star saber and slightly below average for a 4-star servant. Her 9,899 attack, however, is good for a saber and above average overall when compared to the other 4-star servants. Taking a look at her skills, her first skill is Hero's Great Principle, rank EX. It applies invincibility for 1 turn to herself and also increases her NP gain for 1 turn between 30 and 50% depending on level. Her second skill is Mana Burst Bravery, rank D, which increases her Buster Card effectiveness for 1 turn between 20 and 40% depending on level, and also gives her an increase in defense by 20% for 1 turn. Finally, her last skill is Legendary Crimson Hero, rank EX. It decreases her own NP gauge by 100% as a demerit, but it will randomly grant her one of the following effects. Either you increase your Buster Card effectiveness for 3 turns between 30 and 50%, you apply invincibility for all allies for 1 turn, you restore the HP of all allies between 2,000 and 3,000, you increase the attack of all allies between 30 and 50% for a turn, or you gain between 30 and 50 crit stars, all depending on level. Moving on to her passives, she has Magic Resistance rank A, which increases her debuff resist by 20%, and Territory Creation rank C, which increases her Arts Card effectiveness by 6%. Taking a look at her deck and Noble Phantasm, Brave Liz has an Arts Buster deck with Quick, Arts, Buster Buster, and a Buster Noble Phantasm. Her Noble Phantasm is Bathory Brave Elizabeth, which deals significant damage to a single target that ignores defense, with between a 600% and 1000% damage modifier depending on level. It will also inflict burn on the target for 5 turns, dealing between 500 and 2500 damage per turn depending on overcharge. Taking a closer look at her cards, we see that her quick card hits 4 times, her arts hits 3 times, her buster hits once, and her extra attack hits 5 times. She has an NP gain rate of 0.55% and a star rate of 9.9%. And that translates into below average Noble Phantasm gain just due to the low Noble Phantasm gain rate and mediocre star generating because of just 1 quick card. Halloween is here, and so you know what that means. We're treated to a brand new Liz. This time, she's saber flavored. Much like her other iterations, she is a buster servant, but unlike them, she is much more offensively focused. Mana Burst Bravery is the same as your traditional Mana Burst, except it trades off 10% buster damage for a 20% defense buff. Overall, it's a solid skill, as even at 40%, a buster buff is strong enough to considerably increase your Noble Phantasm damage, and the 20% defense buff does help Liz become a bit more tanky and survive hits. Unfortunately, the defense buff only lasts a single turn, so you won't get much use of it most of the time. Thankfully, Liz does have another great option for defense in her skill set with Hero's Great Principle, a 1-turn invincibility which will give you enough defense to withstand anything any enemy can throw at you, so defensively, Brave Liz is pretty tanky. The skill also grants a massive 50% Noble Phantasm gain buff, which can really help out given how low Brave Liz's NP gain is. If you pop this skill right before an enemy Noble Phantasms you, which is usually the best time to activate it, you can expect to not only survive the attack, but also receive a large amount of NP charge too. Finally, Liz's last skill is her most controversial. Legendary Crimson Hero randomly gives you a buff at the cost of 100% NP charge. So if you have 200% NP charge, this skill will bring you back down to 100%. All of the buffs that this skill grants are very strong. A 3-turn Mana Burst, team-wide invincibility, an AoE 3000 HP heal, party-wide 50% attack buff, or a full 50 crit stars, which will guarantee a crit for all of your cards. And notice that most of these buffs are aimed at the whole party, not just Liz, which makes this Liz's only utility skill. However, that 100% Noble Phantasm charge decrease is very significant. When it comes to skill leveling priority, you should max out Mana Burst first for the more consistent damage source, followed by Hero's Principle for the shorter cooldown, and then finally Legendary Crimson Hero as it's your most unreliable skill. Brave Liz's Noble Phantasm is a straightforward single target buster attack that inflicts burn and pierces defense. It isn't flashy in terms of effects, but it does hold up pretty solid for a Noble Phantasm for an offensive servant. Defense pierce is very good to have. Don't underestimate Brave Liz's damage potential, because with Mana Burst, an NP5 single target Buster Noble Phantasm can hurt a lot, especially if you're able to trigger the Buster or attack buff on her third skill. Overall, her kit is very solid. She can deal big damage, making her especially good against bosses, and she has good tankiness thanks to the small defensive buff and her invincibility. However, her straightforwardness is also her weakness. She doesn't do much else aside from damage. Her versatility is limited solely to being the damage dealer saber on the team. She doesn't really fit into any other teams aside from Buster because of her lack of utility, and while her third skill may look enticing, it is not nearly ever worth the cost. The buff it gives are great, but they're so random and specific. More often than not, when you're going for an attack buff for your Noble Phantasm, you're just going to end up with a heal or the crit stars. The chance of you getting the specific buff you need in any given situation is 20%, and paying 100 Noble Phantasm charge for a small chance at getting what you may want isn't usually worth it most of the time, especially given how hard it is to get Liz to 200% Noble Phantasm charge because of her poor Noble Phantasm gain. And while she is a good offensive option, she's far from the best. Bedivere, Saber Alter, Lancelot, Rama, they're all stronger offensive options for sabers, and Brave Liz lacks any niche that she can excel at, unlike Nero or Dayan. As I mentioned, Brave Liz primarily works in a Buster team where she is your primary attacker, which makes her options for team synergy very limited. Of course, you're going to want to pair her with someone who can buff her, like Waver, Hans, Nero Bride, Lancer Liz, Iskander, Shuten, Shakespeare, Nightingale, and Helena. Healers and defensive supports also help. Mosh and Leonidas are especially great defensive supports for her because they can also buff her. Finally, you're going to want a Noble Phantasm battery who can assist Brave Liz with charging her Noble Phantasm, someone like Sansa, Waver, Helena, or Ushi. Brave Liz's Bondcraft Essence is Invitation to Halloween. It increases the Buster card effectiveness of all allies by 20%, but lowers defense by 10%. It's a decent craft essence, but it's usually not worth the demerit. Instead, you should use craft essences that bolster your own Noble Phantasm damage or Buster damage. The new Halloween craft essence, Brave Hero Ellie's Quest, is actually ideal for Brave Liz, but Golden Sumo, Limited Zero, and True Samadhi Flame make for good substitutes. If you're lacking in defensive support, Original Legion works well on Liz as well, while you can also try to maximize your Noble Phantasm damage, in which case Heaven's Field and Halloween Princess are your go-to options. Overall, Brave Liz is a solid offensive saber. She has the tools and the power to take down most enemies and bosses with the right support, and she can even take care of herself with some good defensive skills that will keep her alive in longer, more challenging fights. However, her third skill is too random to be reliable, and the demerit is too costly to ever justify using it in most cases. Her Noble Phantasm gain is mediocre, which further hurts her ability to rely on her third skill, but her biggest flaw is her lack of versatility. Because she has no real utility outside of her overcosted and unreliable third skill, and she is so heavily geared toward offense, she doesn't fit well in many teams outside of your standard Buster team. And even there are just much better options for damage dealing sabers, and she offers no other unique niche to differentiate herself. So she gets a C+ from me. If you don't have Bedivere or Saber Alter or Rama or any of the 5-star sabers, and you just need a saber who can take down really strong lancers, then Liz will get that job done. She's by no means bad, but she just doesn't bring much else to the table, and she's too narrowly focused. I really wish her third skill wasn't random, because if it was more reliable, it would give her the utility that she so desperately needs to be more viable in diverse team comps, and it would give her an edge over the other Buster sabers. But those are my thoughts on Brave Liz. I should also mention that her animations are really fun, and she's worth using alone just for that final Ascension art, but what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below how you plan on using your Saber Liz, and also be sure to be on the lookout for the upcoming Halloween event guide, which will be up soon. And don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you really enjoyed the video. Join the party over at our Discord, chill with us on Twitch, and follow us on Twitter. And I will see you all in the next Spotlight. Soberoni out. Later.